folks, I hope you're having a great day. I just thought I'd give you a little video about the literature review, talking about the final assignment for JSB172. The due date of the literature review is week 12, Friday the 22nd of May, and it needs to be uploaded by midnight. Again, it's an electronic upload like all the other assignments in this unit. You don't need to put it into Assignment Minder, and you just go into Assessment, click on the folder that says Literature Review, and then down the bottom there will be a little section where you can upload your assignment. It's 1500 words and it's weighted at 40%. 1500 words is not a lot to actually say what you need to say in this literature review, so you have to be very selective about what you say and what you don't include. Now, you've already picked 5 sources that you did for your annotated bibliography. Now, depending on what feedback you got from your tutor will depend on what you need to do with those sources. So if the tutor gives you feedback saying, all 5 of these sources are not relevant to your role and scenario, you need to go and find more, then you'll need to go and you'll need to find at least 10 sources, for the literature review. If your tutor says, yes, these sources are good and they're on the right track, then you just need to find at least 5 other sources for your literature review, okay? Again, they need to be scholarly, current sources. You need to be able to put them together as a literature review. Now, what I typically do is I get my sources together and then I organise them into themes. For this, we've said, about 3 themes, but it depends really on what area you're looking at and how you're looking at it as to how many themes there might be. You definitely don't want any more than 3 themes because you haven't got enough room to talk about them in. But if you only have 2 themes, then that's okay. You can definitely do that. If you only have 1 theme, I'm thinking you're probably not reading enough. You can't just write one essay on one theme. It's just not going to work. So what you need to do, put them into piles according to their themes, and then you need to bring them together and write a review of those sources in terms of those themes. Read, analyse and organise these sources, and they can be from anywhere in the world, as I've said with the annotated bibliography earlier, into their 3 key themes. And it needs to be in terms of their relevance to the scenario and the role, okay? So what are the most important issues for a police officer in a situation where they're using crowd control, which I think is scenario 1. What are the key issues for a police officer in that particular scenario? So those sources that you're reading will give you different issues depending on which role you are and all of that type of thing. So you just need to write about that in 1500 words. You will need to include a brief introduction noting what your role and scenario is and a conclusion, and these are part of the word count. You also need to use references, obviously, and cite your sources all the way through your literature review. So you'll need a reference list cited and formatted according to QUT Harvard style of referencing. That is not included in the word count. So the difference between this and the annotated bibliography is that annotated bibliography was just a list of sources with little summaries underneath or annotations, right? The literature review actually takes those sources now and integrates them. So you have to do citing not only in your reference list at the end where you list your references, but also in the text of the literature review. They're called citations. So you put in your author, your date and your page number, things like that, all right? It's pretty straightforward. Again, CiteWrite's the best to look at in terms of that stuff. But think always, how is this source relevant to my role and scenario? That's the way that you need to organise your work in this literature review. So you might say, by far the foremost issue for a police officer in the situation of crowd control is ensuring that everybody in this crowd situation is safe and well. the things that can jeopardize the safety and well-being of people in a crowd situation are blah, 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 blah. The different things that come up are, and you know, you might have a whole bunch of research that comes in just around that particular theme alone. Okay, so make sure you make it nice and focused and specific. We will talk about how to write a literature review and how to synthesize your work in quite a bit of detail in one of the lectures. We'll also go through a bit of that stuff in a tutorial as well. Now, when I talk about synthesize, I mean you're bringing together your sources, your authors from the different sources, and you're saying, you know, Smith such and such is similar or different to Harrison such and such, or there might be a whole bunch of them which say exactly the same thing, so you can group them together. Synthesizing, bringing it together around the different ideas and the different topics and the different themes in the sources that you find. That's very important. As I said before, we will be learning about synthesis in the tutorials and in the lecture. So make sure you keep that in mind. Some things to think of, courtesy of previous work from students last year. Some people missed the whole point of the scenario. They talked broadly about the topic or their role instead of actually doing a review of literature which was related to the role within the scenario. So you're going to fail if you do that. It's just going to be like an essay on something. It's not an essay, it's a literature review. It's quite different. Some people didn't mention what their scenario or role was, and you do lose marks for doing that, so please don't do it. Some people talked about it like it was a book review instead of a literature review. Now, this is something that is quite common. People will say it has 325 pages and used very easily understood language. Those types of things we don't want to know about. You really need to focus on the topic, the argument of these sources, and focus on that in your discussion. Some people copied and pasted straight from their existing annotated bibliographies. That's plagiarism. Don't want to do that. Don't do that. Just avoid doing that at all. Annotated bibliographies are totally different to literature reviews. You cannot just copy and paste straight in. Lots of people use semicolons instead of commas. I don't know why with this particular piece of assessment, but please don't do it. Use commas where commas need to be and semicolons where semicolons need to be. Semicolons are typically used in lists in the middle of a sentence. So there are many ways that police officer can manage mobs in the middle of a crowd control situation, such as then you put in a colon and then you have idea 1, semicolon, idea 2, semicolon, and then you put a full stop at the end when you finish listing them off. That's where semicolons are used. They're not commas. Style areas including things like capitalization in article titles and journal titles, just not looking at how it's done in SiteWrite. Look at the QUT Harvard in SiteWrite and follow it to the letter, and you will do well in that area. Some people really lacked synthesis, as I was talking about before, and therefore lacked analysis or critical thought about the sources that you're talking about. Some people only used non-scholarly sources. Some people didn't cite any sources in their literature review, so literally just wrote for 1,500 words about the topic. You will fail if you do this because you're not following the topic, following the assignment format. Okay, it's pretty important that you don't do that. A lot of people had problems with paragraph structure, just putting in a whole bunch of sentences instead of making it a full paragraph. And some had section long paragraphs, which means their whole section was one paragraph. Please don't do this. Try and find the key sub-themes within those broader themes that you're looking at. Very important. Some people did not talk about what their literature review was going to talk about in the discussion. You say what you're going to say in the introduction, okay? That's what you do. You need to say that in the introduction. Some people didn't name their assignments clearly, again, with name of the assignment and the unit code. Some people had contents pages. Again, you don't need any contents pages in this unit. Some people had no signposting. the next section we'll discuss blah blah blah. Some people clearly hadn't edited their work with some really basic mistakes which could have been fixed by just reading it a second time. Please read it. And if you want to know the best way to get your work reading really well, read it out loud. If there are stuff-ups in your writing, they will come out when you read it out loud. And some people missed out references from their list. Other people did not cite any references at all from their list, even though they had them at the end. So all of these different things are things that you need to consider when you're thinking about the literature review. Again, we'll go through some examples in the online chat, talk more about the feedback and so forth. But for now, I hope that's helpful. You have a great day. See you later.